serious, what's the most paranormal thing that's ever happened to you? Please subscribe, like and leave a comment. Much love to you all. Crazy demon tree story. Let me preface this by saying I'm one of the most skeptical people you'll ever meet. I'm not religious. I don't believe in ghosts or aliens or any of that. This is the weirdest thing I've ever encountered, and I have no real logical explanation for it. No drugs or booze were involved. My friends and I went camping up in the White Mountains of NH most summers in middle and high school and a few years after till life happened, and we all went our ways. Now, being a bunch of unorganized teen boys / man children, we always took forever to get in gear and actually get going, usually not leaving southern MA where we lived until late afternoon, early evening. One year we got up there about 10 PM or so and decided rather than hike into the woods we'd just sort of camp / crash out in the parking lot and hike in the AM. After a bit of unwinding and some food, everyone went to bed except for me and one other dude. We ended up wandering over to a small wooden footbridge over a river. It was a perfectly clear night filled with stars and a fairly bright moon, and we were shooting the breeze for a good couple hours about all sorts of stuff, movies, games, life, etc, etc. Had to be well after midnight by this point. As we were chatting, we both got this creepy feeling of something being there, and it was sinister. Looking at the far end of the bridge, there was this massive dead tree, no leaves, just clawing branches, silhouetted against the sky. We both were like, man, I swear that tree is creeping me out, but that's silly, right? At first we tried to dismiss it as silly, but both of us kept feeling more and more unnerved, until I finally was like, screw this, I'm a grown man, I'm not afraid of a damn tree. I'ma walk over there. I get like 2/3 of the way across the bridge, and it feels like something reached in and grabbed my pounding heart. Just went totally ice cold. I backed up and was like, yeah, I'm afraid of a tree. I seriously think I'm not coming back if I go over there. We retreated from the bridge and decided to go to bed back in the sleeping bags by the car. Next morning, after breakfast, we decide to hike into the trail by going across that bridge. Halfway across, my friend freezes. Dude. I look across the bridge. It's a clearing. There's no trees there. Holy shit. Did you ever get any theories on what it was? I got some theories. 1. What they saw wasn't actually a tree, but foliage or grass, or whatever that just ended up appearing like that in the darkness, or made the shape of a tree in the shadow. 2. They were near a parking lot, so I'm sure they weren't in the middle of nowhere, so at least a part of the trail / forest was maintained by someone who built the wooden bridge. Maybe lumberjacks or the maintenance people came early in the morning and cleared the tree, maybe to use as firewood, or whatever. I'm going to upvote this, so I'm less scared. That will work, right? Upvote icon resembles a tree. It's coming for you. I always had a connection with my grandma. When I was a little kid, there were a couple of times when I'd run to my mom all excited that my grandma was visiting. My mom knew grandma wasn't visiting because she always called first, but then she'd roll into the driveway a few minutes later. Once as an adult, I got a strong feeling I should go see her. It was late, but she usually stayed up late. When I got there, I told her I had a feeling I should visit, and she admitted that she'd had some trouble with a tenant at one of her rentals who threatened her, and she'd had a bad feeling that night too. When she passed, she'd been in hospice for a couple of weeks, but there was no sign that the end was near. It was the middle of the night, and I had a dream where I was in her room and she suddenly sat up and smiled. She told me that it was okay, and she wasn't in pain anymore, and was going to a better place, then walked out the door. A few minutes later, my wife woke me up and told me we just got the call that she'd just passed. I'm pretty skeptical, and I know there are rational and mundane explanations for all these things. No need to point them out to me. There's a part of me that still hopes there's something more, and takes comfort from these experiences. I hate that you have to ask people not to cynically crap all over your experience. You can be logical and still leave room for the inexplicable. People like to pretend we have everything figured out, and that gives them comfort, even though we barely understand so many concepts that drive our very existence, like brain chemistry and forces of the universe. Thanks for sharing. It's a beautiful experience. I feel like you phrased this in such a way that it left an impression on me. I feel exactly the same way. I cannot compliment your words worth adequately. Thank you for sharing. My dad used to tell me about his time in the army and how they would go out bush for training and would see these moving floating lights. Sometimes that would chase them and try to corner them, but then they would disappear before people could get too close. My dad likes to tell stories, so I just filed it away in my mind. Years later, after high school, I was studying a certificate, and one of my lecturers started talking about his time in the army and how they would go out bush and chase these moving floating lights. I nearly lost my shit. They are called minimum lights, if anyone is interested. My family had a friend who was a very secular guy and a pretty remarkable scientist, and he saw these on his property and never had an explanation for them. I'm determined to see one someday. I saw these things all the time when I dive deep in the woods. From what I could tell, it's just the moonlight reflecting off leaves and various shit floating in the air. You see them far more frequently when there is a lot of tree pollen in the air. Now, it's a will-o'-the-wisp trying to lure you into the woods. From pretty much the first night after my dad died, I started seeing him in my dreams. I didn't think anything of it at first, because I figured that's a perfectly reasonable subconscious response to losing a loved one. The weird thing though was that he looked seriously real. Everything else in my dream would have that strange cartoonish vibe to it, yet I could look at my dad and count the individual hairs in his mustache and on his head. In one of the dreams, I became lucid and realized I was asleep. I asked my dad point blank, are you visiting me, or is this just a figment of my imagination? I need to know. He smiled, hugged me and said, I'm here with you right now, son, and I always will be. I love you. I woke up suddenly, and as I did, I saw a very light shadow. Had it not moved, I wouldn't have seen it. It was a head and shoulders, leaning through the doorway and into my room. As soon as I saw it, it quickly moved away and backed out of my room. Somehow it was calming rather than scary. I was absolutely amazed, because that's exactly what my dad used to do when I was little, and he left really early for work. He'd pop his head in and say goodbye. The way this shadow moved was exactly the same. I'm convinced it was him checking in on me. If that wasn't strange enough, my mum called me downstairs that same morning. She tells me to go into the living room and look at the floor. I go in and guess what? Dad's reading glasses have somehow ended up slap bang in the middle of the room. That 110% confirmed it for me. Thank you for posting this. My own father is very ill, and I truly hope he will someday check in on me as well. Sending good wishes to you and your family, and glad you had a loving father who loves you still. Reddit is about to make me cry a second time today. But, seriously, I really feel for you. Hugs. My husband and I were having dinner at a very small restaurant in the basement of a 16th century Amsterdam canal house, and there was a single lit candle on the table. In the middle of eating, the candlestick and its base flies off our table onto the floor, as if someone had knocked it very hard with their hand. The waitress turns around and asks if we did that, and we say no. We all get very creeped out and nervously laugh. Food was great, though. Either it was a clumsy ghost or the ghost of a local who has become hostile to tourists. Probably the latter. We've been there 4 times, but haven't gone in several years due to the number of tourists. We would just be adding to the problem now if we went back. One time in the dead of night my phone was on the edge of my nightstand. I was woken up by it buzzing, and when I went to grab it, it fell off the stand. I reached down with only my head and torso off bed to grab it. All I heard was the word night in my right ear. Bro, that's why I got the IKEA bed with the floor clothing drawers underneath. Wait until you reach into your pants drawer one day, only to have a hand grab yours. Worst part is you can't change your trousers after you've shat them. I walked into a bedroom and the comforter was in the air, about 1 foot from the ceiling. I stood there shocked and it just fell back down onto the bed. To this day I wonder what the fuck I saw. How high was your ceiling? How high was up? About a foot. When I was younger, about 6th grade, and moving to a new city, my mother and I were looking at new houses. After a long day of going house to house, we found one that my mom and I instantly fell in love with. When it was time to go into one of the last rooms, we all walked in, and I remember walking into this small pale blue room and getting this weird feeling throughout my body and had to run outside and throw up. My mom and realtor followed, and that's when she asked how we knew what happened, and then my mom confused said knew what, and then she told my mom that someone had just recently died in that room. I still have dreams about that room. That's so creepy. Did you end up with the house anyways? Haha, no way. I don't experience anything like this ever, nor believe in it, but there was this one time. There a cabinet near the top of my staircase, and I had placed my water bottle on it, not on the edge, but in the middle where in no way would it be able to fall off on its own or due to any breeze. I'm sitting on the couch which is a couple feet away from the cabinet and the water bottle simply flies off the cabinet like someone sucker punched it and goes flying down the staircase. I was home alone. It was 1 AM and I have no clue why it happened. Don't want to think about it. I just keep living my life. Haha, I know this wasn't meant to be funny, but the last sentence is hilarious, and I feel like how I'd react as well. Just note not gonna acknowledge gotta keep on going. In a lot of mythologies, that was the actual advice they would give people was, if you don't acknowledge it, it just ignores you too. Wow, the toddler logic of if I can't see you, can't see me really applies here.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.